When you
Exactly.
come out of a deep, deep darkness, your joy and your happiness is
Yeah.
different.
And everybody sees that.
And you measure it different and it shows different because of the darkness that you've
Yeah.
been through.
You won't believe what the FBI discovered inside Joni Lamb's mansion. Hidden rooms, mysterious artifacts, and shocking documents have surfaced, leaving everyone stunned. What secrets lie behind the walls of her luxurious estate? Could this revelation change everything we thought we knew about the famous star? As investigators dig deeper, more startling details emerge. Stay tuned as we uncover the explosive truth behind this shocking discovery that has everyone talking. You won't want to miss what happens next.
There's so many more stories I haven't told anybody. For example, Jonathan took our kids to our mutual friend's birthday party, and our daughter stuck close to daddy. And later, after I wasn't there, later the next day, Pete's wife told me Pete's so heartbroken, she wouldn't come close to him the whole party. And she was like, she needs to say sorry to Pete. There's so many stories that the world doesn't know that I'm not telling because I'm not trying to convict this man.
Right.
Law enforcement will do it.
FBI investigation, the chilling discoveries in Joni Lamb's mansion. FBI agents arrived at Joni Lamb's mansion in the dead of night, their vehicles cutting through the silence like ghosts in the dark. Neighbors awoke to flashing red and blue lights, reflecting off the massive iron gates that guarded the estate. It wasn't the first time the media had questioned the financial dealings of religious figures. But this was something different. No warning, no public accusations, just a sudden and overwhelming federal presence, as if they knew exactly what they were looking for. The official story was vague at best, an ongoing investigation related to financial mismanagement, suspicious donations, and possible fraud. But unofficially, the whispers told a much darker tale. It wasn't just about money. It was about secrets, about something hidden deep within the walls of Joni Lamb's home, something so disturbing that it had warranted a full-scale FBI operation. Federal agents moved through the property with a sense of purpose, sweeping past lavishly decorated halls, expensive artwork, and perfectly arranged furniture. It was a house that exuded wealth, the kind that only years of influence and control could build. But they weren't here for the furniture. They weren't here for the jewelry or the cars. They were here for something else. Something buried beneath the surface. Then they found it. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a locked door in one of the lesser-used wings of the mansion. But this door was different. Reinforced. Hidden. Not something that belonged in an ordinary home. The agents worked quickly, bypassing security measures before finally breaking through. And what lay behind it made the room go silent.
They do the semi-annual telethon there. I think they call it Heart for the World now. There's a room there just full of phones and cubicles and several hundred people in there that just answer phones all day. And the prayer department was in charge of taking the calls during the telethon when people would call in to donate. But every once in a while, the call volume would be so high that all company employees would be required to be on standby on their phone. And so this was one of those particular occasions. The call volume was exceptionally high. And lo and behold, my phone rang. I answer it, and it's this sweet little elderly lady, and she's weeping, and she's telling me that she's completely in debt. She has nothing, no money, but she does have a last little bit on her credit card, and she's going to give that to Daystar because the person on air said that if you give $1,000 today, God is going to give you $10,000 back. I don't really have words to say how horrible I felt in that moment, that I took that card number and I ran that card, because it just felt very, very wrong. And that was really the first time that I stopped and said, do I want to be a part of this?
It was a private study, but not the kind filled with family photos and religious texts. No, this was different. Lining the walls were rows upon rows of filing cabinets, each meticulously labeled and locked. A massive safe sat against the far end of the room, its digital interface blinking as if daring them to try and crack its code. And then, there were the documents. Scattered across an expensive mahogany desk were pages of financial records, contracts, and most curiously, sealed envelopes marked with names of well-known political and religious figures. The agents wasted no time. Every drawer was opened, every cabinet searched, and every file confiscated. Some of the documents they uncovered were shocking. Detailed ledgers of financial transactions that led to offshore accounts, records of money being funneled into unknown organizations, and, perhaps most disturbingly, a list of donations that simply didn't add up. Large sums of money had been moved under the radar, their sources unclear, their destinations even murkier. But that wasn't the most chilling discovery. A hidden panel in the study's bookshelf led to a secret chamber, a room that should not have existed. Inside, the air was thick with dust, as if the space had been left undisturbed for years. But the contents? They told a different story. Shelves lined with locked boxes, some filled with old tapes, others with documents so aged they looked ready to crumble. A desk, eerily similar to the one in the study above, sat in the center of the room, its drawers filled with handwritten notes, letters, and what appeared to be personal confessions. Some signed, others left anonymous. And then came the tapes. A small, unmarked box held a collection of VHS tapes, each labeled with a date and a name. The names were recognizable. Figures from the religious and political world, individuals who had long been suspected of shady dealings but had never been caught. What was on those tapes, no one outside the investigation knew, but the way the agents handled them, carefully, as if holding evidence too dangerous to be exposed, told the public everything they needed to know. The discovery of the tapes changed everything.
You know, they did show me some stuff, text messages, emails, and some other paperwork that I said, okay, you know, now I'm going to have to go back and talk to Jonathan and Susie, and I'm going to do that this morning to hear their side. But what I will not do, I'm not going to keep going back and forth. I saw what they showed me. I heard both sides of the story. You know, I felt some things in the spirit when I was talking to Jonathan and Susie. I definitely felt some things, you know, when I went to Daystar. And I'm going to post this interview today. I'm going to let everybody chop it up, dissect it, criticize, say, hey, I'm going to post the interview because that's the fair thing, the right thing. People can feel whatever they want to feel about it. And then I'm going to make a third and final video where I share, you know, what they showed me, there's some stuff they showed me and it was like, I have to go talk to Jonathan and Susie. And then I'm going to get Jonathan and Susie's response to, you know, the things that they showed me. And I already started talking to them about it. And I'm going to make the final video and I'm going to wash my hands of it.
What had started as an investigation into financial crimes now seemed like something much larger, much more dangerous. Why did Joni Lamb have these recordings? Were they meant as blackmail? Insurance? Proof of something far more sinister happening behind the scenes? As the FBI continued their search, more shocking details came to light. Another hidden compartment, this time in the mansion's basement, held a collection of artifacts, some dating back centuries. Religious relics, ancient texts, and documents that, according to some sources, contained information that had been kept secret for generations. Some of the texts appeared to reference forbidden religious doctrines, while others seemed to be coded messages that the authorities struggled to decipher. And then there was the safe. After hours of trying to crack the code, the agents finally succeeded in breaking it open. What they found inside left them visibly shaken. Stacks of untraceable cash. More tapes. But the most disturbing find? A set of letters, handwritten and signed with initials that matched those of some of the most powerful individuals in the country. The contents of those letters remain unknown, sealed away as part of an ongoing federal investigation. But the fact that they were kept hidden in a place no one was meant to find spoke volumes. Outside the mansion, the press swarmed, desperate for answers. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claiming that the documents contained evidence of high-profile corruption, others insisting that the tapes held confessions that could take down entire organizations. But the FBI refused to comment, maintaining a wall of silence as they continued their search. As the night stretched on, more discoveries were made. Old photographs surfaced, depicting meetings between individuals who should never have been in the same room together. Bank statements pointed to secret transactions that had been taking place for decades. And in one particularly damning revelation, a ledger was found detailing payments made to anonymous entities, transactions that suggested something far darker than mere financial mismanagement. What had Joni Lamb been involved in? The public was left to wonder. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the FBI wrapped up their operation, loading boxes of confiscated materials into their vehicles and disappearing into the night. The estate, once a symbol of power and influence, now stood as a crime scene, its halls echoing with the weight of unanswered questions. What had the agents seen that had left them so shaken? What was on those tapes that they refused to make public? And most importantly, how deep did this go? As the news broke, the world held its breath. Joni Lamb, a woman who had spent her life preaching faith and salvation, was now at the center of a scandal that could shake the foundations of everything she had built. And with every new piece of evidence that emerged, it became increasingly clear this was only the beginning.
The Lord had told me a couple weeks ago, he said, pick a comment. Well, because I've gotten a lot of emails where like, I've enjoyed seeing you host with your husband and da-da-da-da-da. He said, pick a comment and for viewer feedback. So when Susie saw that it had Doug something about him, she left. Well, she turned around and left. She kind of made a scene from the producers. They told me she huffed out. Jonathan said he wouldn't read it, and so, which was just startling, but I know now that's why the Lord wanted me to do it, because he wanted me to see the heart issue going on here. So Jonathan came in the studio. I was already up singing, and he said, Mom, I'll read the second comment, but I'm not going to read this one. And I said, why? And he said, because I'm not comfortable. And I said, well, I'm not comfortable with you being on the show, so I'm going to cut you from the show. When he argued with me a little bit, which is so out of character for Jonathan, because he's never really given me any issue. Most of his life, he's been amazing. But as you know, he's a fine young man. So he left, and then he sent me a kind of cryptic email. And so instead of responding to it, I sought counsel. I called Jimmy Evans, who's walked with me through this journey, through every step of the way, and knows every detail of our relationship.
Media frenzy, theories, speculation, and unanswered questions. The moment news broke that the FBI had raided Joni Lamb's mansion, the media exploded. Every major network scrambled to cover the story, and within hours, speculation ran wild. What had they found? What was Joni hiding? How could someone with such a pristine public image suddenly find themselves at the center of a federal investigation? The questions outnumbered the answers, and that only fueled the fire. Talk show hosts, investigative journalists, and self-proclaimed internet detectives wasted no time forming theories. Some insisted it was nothing more than a financial scandal, a case of fraud or mismanagement that had spiraled out of control. But others believed something far more sinister was at play. The secrecy surrounding the investigation only made things worse. The FBI refused to release details about what they had confiscated, leaving the public to fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. The first theory to gain traction was that the raid had uncovered illegal financial dealings. Joni Lamb had built a religious empire, and with that came millions of dollars in donations. People wanted to believe that money had been used for noble purposes, but skeptics had long whispered about extravagant spending, offshore accounts, and questionable transactions. The discovery of hidden financial documents inside the mansion seemed to confirm those suspicions. Reporters dug into tax records, business filings, and donation reports, searching for inconsistencies. Some claimed to have found evidence of massive transfers to unknown accounts, possibly linked to shell corporations. Others pointed to lavish purchases that didn't align with the humble image Joni had cultivated. Private jets, multi-million-dollar real estate, and exclusive events with high-profit figures. Suddenly, every financial move she had ever made was under a microscope. But then, new details emerged. Details that made this case about much more than just money. Sources close to the investigation leaked that FBI agents had found a secret study, a hidden safe, and a collection of tapes. That's when the theories took a darker turn. What was on those tapes? Who were the names on the documents? Could Joni Lamb have been involved in something beyond financial crimes? Some speculated that the safe contained classified information, possibly evidence tying her to political figures or even blackmail material. The idea that a religious leader had been secretly collecting damaging information on powerful people sent shockwaves through the media. Internet forums buzzed with speculation. Could this be connected to a larger conspiracy? Was Joni involved in something deeper, something that went beyond her public persona? A few independent journalists suggested that the tapes might contain conversations, confessions, or meetings that were never meant to be made public. The idea that she had been sitting on potentially explosive secrets only added to the intrigue. But the theories didn't stop there. A more extreme theory began circulating online, that Joni Lamb had been part of a secret network, an underground organization that operated in the shadows of religious and political circles. Some claimed the FBI had discovered documents detailing high-profile religious figures and powerful businessmen. Others speculated that her mansion had been used as a meeting ground for secret discussions, negotiations, or even illicit activities. The internet had a way of taking a story and running with it, and soon hashtags like Lamb Conspiracy and What Did They Find were trending. YouTube channels released hour-long deep dives into the case, with titles like Joni Lamb's Hidden Vault, The Secrets the FBI Doesn't Want You to Know, and Exposed, The Dark Truth Behind Joni Lamb's Religious Empire. Some of these videos gained millions of views overnight, with comment sections filled with theories ranging from reasonable to completely absurd.
And then I called 2 other pastors who'd been in ministry for 30 years. And then I talked to a prophetic minister that I know and trust that God has used amazing, like over the last 30 years. So they pretty much all said the same thing. The prophetic person said, this is your Alamo, and you've got to stop this because this is your husband, and you should be treated with respect and honor. And Jimmy said that when you're in a ministry, that you submit to the authority over that ministry, or you'll have a ministry that is chaotic. He said right there, Susie sat here, John sat here, I sat there. And over the weekend, I was so angry at some of the stuff that was said in the email because it's so ridiculous. This wasn't their comment, this was a viewer comment, you know. And it went something like, hey, we're enjoying seeing Joni's husband, Dr. Doug, host with her. He's doing a good job. I also love the song that she wrote, No Fear, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I said in the meeting, because it was on Tuesday, that's when Jimmy could come. So you have a lot of life experience. You've had a lot of bumps in the road, and we've had a lot of battles that Marcus and I fought building this ministry. We started with absolutely nothing, right? Well, our kids haven't. They have been blessed. They've lived in a glass house.
Mainstream news outlets tried to stay balanced, but the demand for answers was too strong. Some investigative journalists pushed for official statements from the FBI, but every attempt was met with a wall of silence. That only fueled the speculation further. If there was nothing shocking in the mansion, why were the authorities being so secretive? What were they trying to hide? Even the most respected media figures couldn't resist adding their own theories. Some pointed out that high-profile scandals often had layers that took time to unravel. Others suggested that the investigation could be bigger than just Joni Lamb, that this was merely the tip of the iceberg. Late-night talk show hosts had a field day with the story, cracking jokes about televangelists and money-hungry preachers. Satirical segments ran headlines like, God's Judgment or the IRS, and When Your Mansion Has More Secrets Than the Bible. But behind the humor, there was a real sense of unease. Nobody knew just how far this investigation would go or who else might be implicated. Then came the biggest shock yet: rumors of a black book found inside the mansion. According to leaked reports, the FBI had discovered a list of names inside the safe, names of people who were either donors, business partners, or something else entirely. The fact that this document had been kept hidden raised immediate questions. Who was on the list? Were they involved in something illegal? And most importantly, why had Joni been keeping track of them? Some believed it was an innocent donor list, but others were convinced it was something much darker. Conspiracy theorists latched onto the idea that Joni had been keeping a record of secret dealings between influential figures. Theories ranged from political blackmail to a list of corrupt insiders who had worked together behind the scenes. As media outlets scrambled to verify these claims, another bombshell dropped. Sources claimed that surveillance equipment had been found inside the mansion, devices that didn't belong in a private residence. High-tech recording devices, encrypted hard drives, and even security footage that allegedly documented secret meetings. The FBI refused to comment, but leaks suggested that investigators were taking the discovery very seriously. That revelation led to a new wave of theories. Was Joni secretly recording conversations with powerful figures? Was she involved in espionage, blackmail, or something even more sinister? Some speculated that she had been forced into silence, that someone else was pulling the strings behind the scenes. The media firestorm became relentless. Every day, new theories emerged, each more sensational than the last. Some claimed the entire investigation was a setup, orchestrated by Joni's enemies to bring her down. Others believed she was a whistleblower, someone who had been collecting evidence to expose corruption. Until someone turned the tables on her. Meanwhile, her followers were divided. Some remained fiercely loyal, insisting that she was being framed, while others struggled to reconcile their faith with the growing scandal. Religious leaders weighed in, with some distancing themselves from Joni and others urging the public to wait for the full truth. And yet, the biggest question remained unanswered. What was the FBI really after? If the investigation was just about financial fraud, why were so many documents sealed from public record? If it was about political connections, why hadn't more names been revealed? And if Joni had been keeping secrets, who else knew about them? The media frenzy showed no signs of slowing down. Theories, speculation, and unanswered questions continued to spread, turning Joni Lamb's case into one of the most talked about scandals of the decade. But with every passing day, one thing became clear. Whatever the FBI had found inside that mansion, it was something that had the power to change everything.